Okay, we're recording. We are in the 10th parak of Sefer Yeshayahu. If you recall from last week, we had actually started this series of rebukes of Tochachot, each of which had the same refrain that happened, which was B'chol zot lo shava po v'od yado netuya. That despite this, despite what had happened, the Jews hadn't repented, and God's outstretched hand was there, unfortunately striking them because they weren't learning their lesson. This parak begins the first four psukim with the final of that series of rebukes. And so we're going to see, if you look at the bottom of the end of Pasuk Dalet, it's going to have that same refrain, B'chol zot, lo shava po v'od yado netuya. It's going to have the same refrain again. Yeah.
A different, coming from a different direction. It's God's anger is burning, but on the opposite of that same sword is there's a lot of patience going on.
Well, he is let's put it this way. I'm not sure how you would define patience with God. In other words, God will not destroy the Jewish people. We know that. But we had already talked about the fact in a previous parak, okay, that only thing that's going to remain back in Perek Chet, we talked will be 1/10 of the people, and of that 1/10 of the people, even some of those will be removed. So it's going to be a position, basically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing, of removing the Rishayim, allowing those who were willing to repent, and maintaining just that elite group who are prepared to do what they're supposed to do. So being 90% of the people being destroyed, according to the Meforshim, and suffering all of these tragedies, I'm not sure if I'd call it patience or ultimate faith.
I mean, if he's doing this 3 times, I mean, it's 3 different situations.
Yeah, but I'm saying lo shav apo, b'chol zot lo shav apo. His anger has not been pulled back, right? He's still there. V'od yado netuya. He's still ready to do something. Now, the ready to do something is not a positive ready to do something. There'll be punishment that will be associated with it. Unless there is 100%, there is always hope. There is always hope. But I'm not sure I'm calling that hope patience. But again, we assigning human attributes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu anyways is kind of, we do it. Would you call, right, Erech HaPayim, but would you call a person who is, who's, I know it's illegal nowadays, who's patching their kid as someone as being patient? I'm patching you because I know you're going to get the message, or you're just trying to get the message across and teach them and hopefully make sure they don't do it anymore. So I don't know. But this is the fourth of those refrains that happens. What's interesting, by the way, is that it's located in a separate chapter. It's divided by everything else. And I think part of the reason why the church divided it was specifically because of the fact of this opening word, hoy. Okay. Now, hoy sounds like oi, okay? And it is. Hoy is this word of pain and regret and sorrow and all of that. When that hoy happens, what's happening here is we find it repeated again if you look in Pasuk Hey. And so while we're dealing with this series of rebukes that have a refrain to it, this one with which we're opening actually has a dual kind of aspect to it. It has an opening word that is repeated in the next section, and it has the final of the closing words from the previous sections. So I have a feeling that this word hoy is ultimately what drove the church to say that this final tochacha should be separated from the others. I don't know. I haven't seen any definitive answer on it, and I don't know even where to look on those kind of pieces. But the pasuk begins, hoy hachokekim chikikei aven. Okay, woe unto those who are the chokekim chikikei aven, those who write the law, but the law that they're writing is a law that is corrupt. Now, the Marikra talks about the fact that ultimately this is just referring to the practice that the judges in those times, the corrupted judges had in those times, to create documents that were forged that would go ahead and would be able to extract money from innocent people. So chokekei and the chokekim, the judges, the lawmakers, who are creating the Chikukei Avon. On the other end, the Radak says that this is specifically talking about a couple of groups of people. One is the Chokekim, who are Chokekei Avon, are the judges who are making unjust laws. And then, as we see, Umechatvim Amel Kitev, and also the Sofrim, their scribes, their secretaries who are working within the court systems, who then publish those laws. So it's two groups of people we're condemning. There's no sense of a check and balance. No one's standing up and no one's saying, hey, this is horrific. This is terrible. Now, again, we have this balance within the Pasuk. There's this parallelism to the Pasuk. So it's a parallel. We have those two pieces to it. We're cursing out now, in essence, the exploitations that occur through what is called the system of justice, through the courts. The courts are exploiting others. The Pasuk continues, Lahatot midin dalim v'ligzol mishpat aniyei amim. Again, the parallel, what are they doing? They are perverting justice against the poor, and they steal through the rule over the impoverished of the nation. Liot almanot shalalam vet yitomim yavozu. That ultimately the almanot, the widows, are shalalam. Now, there's two possible explanations to this. One is the simple, disgusting one, and that is that the widows are being robbed. That they're just taking advantage of. Before we had the poor and the impoverished, and now we have the people who are powerless. Shlalam mean that they're ultimately their shlal is their spoils. Okay. However, there is a second explanation, which the Dat Mikra raises, other raises as well, which says no. Actually, not only are they taking advantage and stealing, but they're taking advantage to the extreme extent that they're enslaving the widows, that the widows, they are making them into shvachot. They're making them into maidservants. Their spoils are not that they're despoiling the widows, but the widows are the spoils. That Yitomim Yavozu, and they're doing the same thing to the orphans. Again, either they're stealing from the orphans, or they're taking control over the orphans and using them as indentured servants. Umat hasu liyom pkudah. And so then, what the Radak points out is, what do you plan on doing on the day when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to remember all of this? You're doing all of these horrific things. What's going to happen on that day? The day when the destruction, here's this word shoah again, okay, that when the destruction is going to come from the distance. Who is the distant destruction? That's the Assyrians. This is the ultimate threat that's happening in this time. This is the time frame when the Assyrian Empire is still strong. It is going to exile the northern kingdom. It's going to attack Yehudah. It's going to destroy much of Yehudah. Ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to save the Jews of Yerushalayim in a miraculous way. But ultimately, all that Ashur is doing, he is an instrument of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in terms of punishing the Jewish people. What are you going to do when all this happens? Almi tanusu le'ezra. Who are you going to run away to get help? Va'ana ta'azvu kvodchem. And where are you going to put your honor? Now, what's the honor in this case? Kvodchem. Okay. The Mitzudat Zion says kavod can also mean your assets, your property, your wealth. So if you look at it that way, all the things that you have stolen from the poor, the defenseless, when that day comes, the day of ultimate reckoning, what are you going to do with that? What good is that going to do for you? Where are you going to hide it all? That's the way he says it. The Abarbanel, interestingly, has a different twist on it. He says, no, your honor. Now, a person's honor can be something that is a positive and it can be a negative. A person's honor can be, you have to cover the brios. You have to take care of people. You have to respect them. You respect. But honor for other people can also be that sense of haughtiness and ga'ava, that sense of pride that doesn't necessarily belong there. Where are you going to put? You thought you were these powerful people, you dayanim. you leadership of this people. You thought you had all this power and you were walking around in your robes and all the other covet that you had. At the end of the day, when Ashur comes and he's going to attack you and you're going to have nowhere to hide, what good is this honor going to do to you for you? So it could be what you've stolen, and it could be who you are at the very same sense. Both of them, the Navi is asking to the Jewish people. Now,
is he quoting?
no, there are words, there's phrases. Listen, a good curse is a good curse. So there are pieces of the Tochacha that we find the similar. Here, the Navi is talking specifically. He says, Bilti, okay, Pasuk Daled, what's happening now? Bilti chara tachat asir. What does that mean? You're going to have no other choice except to bow down to the one who is taking you captive. V'tachat harugim yipolu. And they're going to be among those there are going to be people who are going to be killed. B'chol zot lo shavapo v'od yado netuya. Ultimately, what are you going to do? Are you going to do tshuva? Are you not going to do tshuva? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to let up at this point. Now, Rashi does say, "B'makom asher lo kara," this idea, or I'm sorry, "Bilti kara tachat asir." What Rashi says is you're going to end up being in a place where you have never bowed down before. You're going to be in a chutz la'aretz. It's going to be where the place of your captivity, of being bound up is going to take place. You're going to be taken out. Yeah. This is talking about everyone. This is all of them, right? Okay, this has been all of these descriptions have been going to both of them, and we. It didn't. So what happened was no. It almost happens to the south. The north never repents. They're going to be gone. It's beforehand. Okay, we're still in the time of Achaz. Okay, the north is going to be gone in a little while. The south is going to repent for a period of time and be saved. Okay. So but the emphasis is on a period of time. But it's going to be a very costly repentance because, as we know from the Assyrian, again, just to remember all of what's happening from a security perspective. Okay, so right now you have the northern kingdom that has aligned with Aram, also in the northeast, and they're trying to pressure the south to come into a coalition with them to defend against Ashur. Ashur is the greater threat. You have Mitzrayim on the southwest. Mitzrayim is the other great empire. Okay, what is ultimately going to happen is, even though Aram doesn't cross into Eretz Yisrael proper, and it's more the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom is going to determine that they're going to try to create an alliance with Ashur. Therefore, what's going to happen next is Ashur is going to destroy the north, exile people. It's going to attack Aram and destroy there. Mitzrayim is going to come at the same time. There's going to be some attempts to try to get assistance from Mitzrayim. The Philistines are attacking from the west. Everyone is converging on Eretz Yisrael until the Assyrians make it so far down, okay, in the time of Chizkiyahu Melech, that they're going to destroy much of the southern kingdom. And again, they get to Yerushalayim, they place it under siege, and there's this miraculous event of salvation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does that we're going to describe in this parak as well. That's the last piece of the Tochacha. In other words, this piece, those stanzas of Tochacha have finished now. And Pasuk Hey starts a new piece. Yeah.
It says, like he's not gonna realize his anger.
Right.
He's gonna have an outstretched arm. Isn't that like contradictory?
No, outstretched arm is power. It's not say against the Jews, right? It's not right. That he say it's not a point of salvation. Okay, it's a point of punishment. Now, Pasuk Hey starts the new piece. Hey to Yutet talks about Ashur. Okay, this was rebuked to the Jewish people. Now God is going to turn to Ashur. And the problem that's going to happen with Ashur is the Assyrians are going to think the reality is that all that they're accomplishing is because of themselves. They don't realize that they're an instrument of God. And so God is going to turn to Ashur and say, you guys better wise up on what you're doing, because your time is going to be limited otherwise. If you go too far, it's going to be your problem. Now, it's going to go from Posuk Hey to Posuk Yutet. And as I mentioned, okay, what after Yeshayahu talks about all that happened, okay, what had happened, what would be happening to the north and could have happened to the south, he now turns to that evil kingdom of Hoy. So Hoy Ashur Shevet Apim. Now he turns to them, and again he uses the same word of Hoy. That's the same word we opened the parak with, and it's again this word that is that shows a sign of regret. It's like Oy. Okay, it's somewhere between the sigh and the cry. Somewhere in there is that word Hoy. And what he says is, Shevet Api, that ultimately you are that staff of my anger. In other words, you've been the instrument to punish the people. That's who you are. Umateu v'yadam za'ami. And God says that ultimately you have the staff, okay, that is expressing my anger. Za'am, kas, those are the same words. So you find the parallel. Rashi says, Umateu biyadam za'ami, that ultimately this is what we call a mikra misuras. There's some words that are understood within this phrase. Umateu za'ami biyadam shel bnei Ashur. Okay, it's the way it should really be. The staff is my anger that is in the hands of the people of Ashur. Now, the Radak also says, Biyadam Za'ami is also in their place in Eretz Yisrael, that they came to Eretz Yisrael and they're creating this anger that occurred there. Now, Begoy Chanef Ashalchenu, against a hypocritical people. Now, who are the hypocritical people? The Jews. Okay, I'm going to send you, Ashur, to attack that hypocritical people. Am evrati atzavenu, and I'm going to have you go against the nation that has caused evrati, evra, v'zam. Okay, we see those words in the Haggadah, if you remember, are different synonyms for anger. Evrati is probably fury. Atzavenu, I will command you to do this. Ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm angry at the Jewish people. Lishlol shalal vilavos baz. I am sending you, Ashur, to take the spoils of the people. Sumo mirmas kechomer chutzot, and I'm going to make them they trample them like the mud of the streets. Chutzot are streets. Uvechutzot Yerushalayim lahavdil, right? In the open areas of Yerushalayim, kechomer like the mud, mirmas is to trample. What ultimately Rashi says, I'm having you do all of this so the Jewish people should do tshuva. They're not taking it because the Navi, they're not doing tshuva because the Navi says so, but so if they're not doing it because the Navi says so, I'm going to give you a patch, and this is going to hurt. V'hu lo chen yidamem. But fascinatingly, they don't even imagine what's going on. In other words, they don't realize, Ashur can't imagine that this is really coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rather, what they say to themselves, they don't have in their hearts, they're not thinking such. They're imagining to themselves, no, they're not there to punish, as Rashi explains. They're there to destroy and to conquer. They're going to try to break lo ma'at. In other words, they think that their power is unlimited. It has no limit to it. Malbim says that he doesn't understand that just like he should be the ones that they should only be punishing the ones HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants them to punish, they think, Ashur thinks they're going out and they're creating this vast empire. They have a specific purpose. You're supposed to do X, not X plus Y plus Z. They think that it's not lo lachrit rak ma'at, says the Malbim. They're not supposed to do just a little. They think they're supposed to be doing a lot. So there's this incongruity between what Ashur should understand and what Ashur thinks. Ki yomar halo sarai yachtav melachim. Because ultimately what they're saying, okay, that in their hearts, they're saying to themselves, okay, that all of our officers, they should all become kings. In other words, he's going around, he's conquering nations, and Ashur is saying so, by the conquering all of these nations, I'm giving jobs to all my buddies. And each one of them has a right to be in charge. Hello. And now we're going to give a list of places. Kamish, Kalanu. Okay, isn't Karkamish, which was one of the places that was conquered by the Assyrians, isn't it like Kalanu? Now, according, it's the name of a city. Okay, it's in the Assyrian Empire, so it's north, it's Transjordan area, okay, and north. So the Radak says all of these cities that are going to be listed are all along the Euphrates. All of them were conquered already by the Assyrian king. And he says, and what the king is saying to himself is, look, I'm going to give you a list of cities. I got this city, I got that city, I got that city, I got that city. And if you look at the last word of that sentence, it's Shomron. So just like I conquered Karkamish, I conquered Kalmo, okay, I conquered Arpad, I conquered Hamat, I conquered Damascus, Damasek, Shomron will also be one of my conquests. I'm giving you a list of all my successes, and I'm going to end it off with this final success, your conquest, the north. Well, that's actually still up with the Shomron, because first the attack is coming to the north. Okay, that's just the direction they come, is they come first to the north. So that's the Radak. The Radak says this, that all of them have been conquered. Interestingly, the Maharikra, he says actually the reason why they're in pairs is he says, hello, Kechar Kamish, Kalno. He says, just like I conquered Karkamish, I'm going to conquer Karno. And just like I conquered Arpad, I'm going to conquer Hamat. And just like I conquered Damascus, I'm going to conquer Shomron. See, what the Marie Kra wants to deal with is he's trying to understand just the structure of the sentence. Why are they presented in pairs? If I want to list all of the places I've conquered, just give me a list. And then I could say, Kishomron. They must be listed in pairs, says the Maharikra, because there must be something about this pairing. Well, we know Shomron hasn't been conquered yet. And so if I have three sets of pairs and I'm working backwards and I know the third pair, the second place wasn't conquered, maybe that's the same thing about the second pair that the second place wasn't conquered, and maybe that's the same thing about the first pair that second place wasn't conquered. Whichever way it is, all that this pasuk is trying to convey to us is that the king of Ashur is feeling very confident. I have conquered these great places, and I'm going to be able to conquer more great places. All of that is open to me. And he says, Asher matzah yadi lemamlechot ha'elil, just like my hand found its way. In other words, just like I was able to overwhelm the monarchy of the idol. Now, what is the monarchy of the idol? Okay, just like the Radak says, just like I conquered other nations and their kings, okay, ufsilehem and their idols, Yerushalayim and Shomron. I'm going to do the same thing with Yerushalayim and Shomron. Rashi, however, is bothered by that explanation. Rashi says, now what the Radak says makes sense within the context, because what the previous pasuk, if you look at it again, pasuk tet, what it says is, just like I did here, I'm going to do here. And so according to the way the Radak explains it, just like I did there, I did here. Just like I conquered other nations and their idol, despite their gods, I'm going to conquer you despite your God. But Rashi has a little bit of a problem, and that is, if you look in the word Yerushalayim, why does it have mi Yerushalayim umi Shomron? Why does it have from Yerushalayim and from Shomron? And so Rashi says that actually there's a medrash, and the medrash explains that there were idol factories in the north and in Yerushalayim. And these idol factories made pagan gods and sold them. Okay, and so what he's saying is, look, just like I was able to conquer those other nations, okay, who bore the idols that had made in Jerusalem on the bottom and made in Shomron on the bottom, just like I was able to do that, I'm going to be able to conquer you. So it's according to Rashi, it's more like an unwritten threat. Okay, I was able to conquer these nations with your idols. Just look what I can do to you. That's what's unwritten. So we're really not sure, but again, it's the same sense of self-confidence that Ashur is displaying. Halo kasher asiti l'shomron ula elileha. Just like I did, okay, again, the king of Ashur is still saying this, just like I'm going to do that to Shomron, and it's God's. I will do the same thing to Yerushalayim, and it's God's. Now, interestingly, Rashi points out, if you look at the pasuk, until now, Ashur has been in the north, and Ashur is going to conquer the north. Now it says, just like I conquered the north, I'm going to conquer Yerushalayim. So Rashi explains that this is a pasuk that talks about the next stage of what Ashur is going to do. That the beginning has talked about Ashur, you're going to conquer the Jews. Okay, and you're going to conquer the way you conquer. You're coming from the north. You're going to start at the north. And we kind of assume Yerushalayim will be in the mix. And so Ashur says, just like I conquered all those lands around the Euphrates River where I come from, I'm going to take care of you Jews the same way. Now he says, okay, I conquered the north. In other words, this is a little later in history. This next statement is going to take place. It's a little later in history, and I conquered the north. And just like I conquered the north, now I'm going to conquer Yerushalayim. It says, the Navi continues, Vahaya, and it will be. Now, this is the beginning of the punishment of Ashur. Assyria is going to be punished. They're punished because they've gone above and beyond what they should be doing. They're being punished because they didn't understand their role. So there's a responsibility. Remember, we found we encounter this also with Mitzrayim, the famous medrash of Paro. You know, Paro says, God, why you told me that the Jews were going to, you said the Jews were going to be enslaved 400 years. They're going to be enslaved, and they're going to suffer, those Jews. I did your bidding, God. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, according to the Medrash, says, it's very nice. I said they were going to be. Did I say you have to be the one doing the bidding? Okay. And so Egypt gets punished. Here, Ashur is going to get punished because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you shouldn't have thought that this is all coming naturally, your successes. You should have realized what was going on, and you went too far as well. Vaya, kivatsa Adoshem et kol ma'aseu b'Har Tzion of Yerushalayim efkod al pri godel levav melech Ashur. That when God is going to do what needs to happen, in other words, when God is going to punish, when it will be fulfilled, yivatza bitzua is the carry out, execute, right? Okay, all what He wanted to do. In other words, when God has punished the Jews, b'Har Tzion of Yerushalayim, efkod al pri godel levav melech Ashur. God says, I am going to remember, which is another way of saying, He has good memory. I'm going to punish the increased arrogance of the king of Ashur, Val Tiferet Rum Enav, and also about the haughtiness of his looking up. Okay, we would say nowadays it's not Rum Enav. We talk about your nose is in the air. Rum Enav is the same thing as your nose is up in the air. You're completely full of yourself. Now, Kivatza, Rashi says that ultimately, okay, that what is going to happen here is, notice, et kol maser b'Har Tzion Yerushalayim. God says, I'm going to do everything that needs to happen at Har Tzion Yerushalayim, which means the Jews at that point are going to be punished, but also there's going to be the remainder of the Jews who've done tshuva. Where do you see the tshuva? So Rashi fills that in. Rashi says that after the conquest of the north and some of the cities of Yehudah, the Jews who remain are going to realize what's happening, and they're going to do their tshuva. According to Yivatza Hashem et kol ma'asehu, the Ibn Ezra says, though it's easier, it's not that God is going to accomplish His ultimate goal in doing, and the Jews will repent, but God will do His ultimate goal, and the Jews will be punished. And Ashur, the Assyrian armies, are going to, almost capture. They're going to encircle, besiege Yerushalayim and Har Tzion. So that's going to happen. And then in terms of the Goda, Levav, and Tiferet, Rumenav, so Rashi says, okay, that ultimately comes like Paru, to be great. It's not a fruit, it's from the word a lot. Okay, and Rumenav, the Mitzudat David says, Arut Gavato, that they're going to be so their pride is going to be beyond. Ki amar b'koach yadi asiti, because Ashur is going to say all that I have done, I've done in my own power. They're not going to realize what's happening here. Uvechochmati ki nevunotati, and he's going to say, and also through my wisdom, Ashur is going to say, I was so smart in how I handled it. Ki nevunoti. Rav Hirsch explains that this was because I was endowed, my wisdom, because I was endowed with insight, is the terminology he used. With insight. Nevunoti is nifal, and it is going to be, I was endowed with, okay? Or Rashi just says, my wisdom because I was so smart. I'm so smart, I did all this. I'm so strong, I did all of this. Ve'asir gvulot amim, and what I did is I removed, I have the nation, the boundaries of the countries I have taken over, meaning, and this is where Chazal talk about that Bas Sancheriv, that when that Sancheriv came, Melech Ashur, Bilbel et kol ha'umot, Sancheriv, Ashur, the king of Ashur, the king of Assyria is Sancheriv. He comes, this is the Gemara in Brachot and Daf Chavchet, and he is going to mix up all the nations of the world. There will no longer be this pure identity, which is part of the reason we say that Amalek nowadays. Okay, we don't have an Amalek nowadays because we don't know who Amalek is. All the people after Sennacherib did all of his conquests and all of his population transfers. There's no such thing any longer of this idea of the nation, of the boundaries. I've removed all the boundaries of all the people. I've shaken up the whole world. He's going to say all of these things. Va'atudotehem, and also their place, their position. The Radak says also their treasuries. Now, what is atudotehem? Why should that be a treasury? Atudotehem comes from the word atid, according to the Radak, the future. Why is a treasury a future? Because people store things in treasuries because they're looking for the future. Okay, looking towards the future. They're hoping to have that at a later time. And there is Shosh Seiti, and I have completely despoiled it. Vorid Abir Yoshvim. And I went ahead and I came down, okay, or I brought down the mighty who were in their places of strength. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I am going, that all of these things is what they're saying. Ashur is saying, I've accomplished all of these amazing things. I've conquered people. I've changed the nature of nations. I've done all of these amazing things. And all that they're saying is the reason they're being punished. Vatimtza kaken yadi lechel ha'amin. And what he is going to then say, that Ashur is going to say, I have spoiled, again, I've taken away all of the treasure houses of the mighty nations. And I went around and I was just like collecting eggs from nests that didn't have the birds protecting them. And using this metaphor further, Ashur says, no one flapped the wing and no one chirped against me. So Ashur is just so full of themselves that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're going to get punished. Hayit pa'er hagarzen ala chotzevbo. Ultimately, okay, he says, will the person, the garzen, let me rephrase it. God says, this is ridiculous what you're doing. Will the garzen, a garzen is the saw, okay? Ala chotzevbo, on that which he sawed. Now, or that which he cut, or yun, I don't know the right word. Okay, what does he say? You were only a tool in all of this, Assyria. So you think the guy does the saw that's cutting down the tree? You got a saw cutting something. Does the saw say, look how powerful I am? It's only a utensil. How can you say you're so powerful? Ki vatsa Hashem et kol ma'as. I'm sorry. One minute. Hayitbayer gazen ala chotzev bo im yitgadel hamasor al menifo. Will, there's another kind of saw. The gazen is more of I'm sorry, like an axe. Okay. Will the mishor go over that which he is cutting? Ka'anif shevet vet mirimav kaharim mateh lo etz. Are you going to go ahead and say, will the person who lifts up the staff, is the staff going to take pride, or the person who lifts it up? All what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying is, you were my tool to achieve an ends. You think that this is you? This was all me. Just like the axe, the saw, the staff, none of them have independent powers. You didn't have independent powers. Karim matel loetz. Okay. Ultimately, when a person lifts up that mateh, it's not the wood that's lifting it up, it's the person behind it. Lachen, and therefore, says God, Yeshalach Adon Hashem Tzvakot Mishmanav Razon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take Mishmanav Razon. He's going to attack those who are fat with the thin. What do you mean, those who are fat with the thin? The Radak explains that those who are empowered, or those who are the people of force, are going to be punished by people who don't seem to have any power. V'tachat kvodo yikad yikod kikod esh. And in place of his kavod. Now, what is the king's great honor? So there are two possibilities. A king's great honor is his military force. We just need to look at certain despotic kings. Their greatest honor is the military that they have. He's going to say that there will be, in place of all of that, there will be this fire that consuming, and there's a medrash on this. According to the Radak, according to Rashi, Rashi says tachat kvodo. The kvodo are the uniforms, the royal clothing. And that's going to be the description of how ultimately they're going to be destroyed when they've placed siege on Yerushalayim. Just to give you the medrash for a minute, the medrash writes, this is Gemara Sanhedrin, Tzadei Dalet and Aleph, Tachat Kvodo, Yikod, Kikod Eish. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yochanan, Tachat Kvodo, Velo Kvodo Mamish. It means that there was going to be this fire beneath his glory, but it wasn't actually on his glory. What does it mean? Ki had Rabbi Yochanan kari le'lamane michvodotai. He says, first of all, what it talks about is what Rabbi Yochanan talks about. His clothing was called his honor. Rabbi Elazar matachat kvodo mamish kesreifat b'nei Aaron malahalan sreifat neshama v'guf kayam afkan sreifat neshama v'guf kayam. Rabbi Elazar says tachat kvodo, it means him, and the way the Assyrian armies were destroyed when they had laid siege on Yerushalayim, their clothing remained, but their bodies disappeared, were taken away. Or their bodies remained, and the neshamot were taken away, and they died.
Compared to the children of Aaron.
That's
a very lofty comparison.
It's a very lofty comparison, but we talk about the same kind of concept of the sreifa. Okay, so there's two different kinds of, here we're talking about, it says, in place of your kavod, there's going to be a fire. So where your kavod is, what is your kavod? If your kavod is the clothing, then all that's going to be left are the clothing. And the bodies are going to be just disappear. Those are the people placing siege on Yerushalayim. If it's going to be the body is the kavod, then in the neshama, what makes a person alive is going to disappear. Vaya or Yisrael la'esh. The or of Israel. Now, what's the or of Israel? Okay, this is, Rashi says we're talking about Chizkiyahu HaMelech, Chizkiyahu HaMelech, where they learn Torah. The Torah is or. That's going to be the reason why there's this fire. Radak says the or Yisrael is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kdosho L'Lahava, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the Tzadikim, Rashi gives the same piece, are going to be this flame, Uva'ara ve'ochlam, Shito Shmiro b'yom echad, and they're going to eat and consume all of the different kinds of thorn and thistles of that time. Now, what were the thorns and thistles? The Ibn Ezra says those are the Rishonim. Okay, Rashi says those are the people who are the officers, the important people. All of those are going to be done. Uchvod ya'aro uchar milo, and the honor of the Ya'ar, of the forest, and the Carmel, which are the different kinds of fields. Now, the Radak explains that ultimately Ashur had these, not only this great army, the Assyrians, they also had all these the supports to maintain these armies. And the armies, the supports, they had the armies provided, the quartermasters, they provided the food, they provided everything. And they had all these amazing lands that provided everything for their fields. All of that, minefesh basar yechalem, whether it's an individual, whether it's meat, everything is going to be destroyed. Vaya kimoses noses. And ultimately it will be like kimoses noses, says Rav Hirsch, as a banner, like the word nace is a banner, like a flag to restore people's faith in God. It's going to be like a flying banner there, a waving banner that everyone is going to see. Now, Radak says, Moses Hanoses is going to be that their encampment is going to be namas levavam. They're just going to melt away in fear. Okay, when they see the nace, when they see the flag of the Jewish people, when they see this, all of them will just disappear. Ushar eitz yarom mispad you, and ultimately, what remains, they'll just be what's going to remain of the eights. Now, the eights, here is the Jewish people. It's just going to be a little bit left. There's not going to be a lot left. I'm sorry, this is the Ashur still. The Assyrians, there's not going to be a lot of them left. V'nar yichtevem. So few will there be that a child who's still learning how to write will be able to record everyone. So it's going to be just a little bit left of this Assyrian greatness. Yeah. History, this is going to be the fall of the Assyrian Empire.
By who?
Well, if you remember, the Assyrian Empire is brought down ultimately by the Babylonian Empire. Okay, not by the Jews. But what they did is going to be the cause of it. We're going to stop right here because I mentioned earlier we're going to have to continue next week, and we will continue next week and finish the parak.
Thank you.